All right. Well, welcome to another episode of Compliance in Motion. I'm really excited about our guest today. So, if you're listening or you've tuned in through YouTube and watching us, welcome. Today, I've got Randy Milliron. Randy, I got the name right. Randy Milliron. He's a safety manager with a combined 28 years of experience in both public sector, surface coal mines, and private industries. So it breaks down as 10 years public sector, 10 years surface coal mines, and 8 years in private industries. And we're super excited about that. So welcome to our session today, Randy. Thank you for coming on. We've not had a guest that has these three distinct experiences. So I'm looking forward to hearing your insights and thought process on how they're similar, different, maybe even some inside scoop on here's a best practice that worked really good in private industry, but you have to change it up for a municipality kind of a thing. Folks, welcome Randy to our session.
Thanks for having me.
So Randy, let's get started with just some background information here first. So to start us off, tell us a little bit about, what, to level set for our listeners and give us some idea of like, let's start with the municipality, like in your experiences there. What is the snapshot of a safety professional who works in a municipality?
Well, that's a great question, and what I would say is if you if you work in government, things just happen slower. They're at a slower pace. So, versus private industry where you're working within a budget, you have X number of dollars you get to spend per year in safety. Whereas in the city municipality, those are taxpayer dollars. So it goes through a lot more hoops for things to get planned and approved. And also the budgetary process is so much longer. So we start, it's kind of it's a negative thing, I guess you would say. Some people look at it as positive, but we start planning our budget for the next fiscal year in February.
No.
Matter of fact, we just got an
Yeah.
email last week saying, "Hey, your budget book will be available, on February 1st." And you're just like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe we have to go through this." I mean, in fact, things that I want to, it's kind of frustrating for me, but things that I want to do in our safety division is I have to literally plan out a year ahead. So I
Really?
might have somebody that reaches out to me and let's say dash cams, and they'll say, "Hey, we'd really like to, work with you on dash cams." And I'm like, "That's great, but why don't you retouch or touch back up with me back in January of next year? Because that's when I start planning." And literally, that's probably the biggest thing. So there are, and it's interesting because I've received phone calls from our citizens talking about different things that are going on inside our city. And I have to tell them that I am the safety manager for the city employees, not for the whole city. So
Mhm.
I'm not out there governing other contractors and such. So that was kind of an odd change for me. Is most of the work and activity, construction and such that's going on inside our city, it's not ours. So, but I am in
Right.
charge
Yeah.
of our employees and the safety of our employees. So, and our senior leaders, they're in charge of managing the programs that the city offers and also managing our employees. So
So you
I would
got
say
quite
budget's probably the one big thing.
quite a like decentralized group of people, I would imagine, when you start to get into all these different silos. So your day to day is probably spent trying to figure out where to be when and who to connect with across all the decentralized locations.
Yeah, I haven't done the math in a while, but I think we have 8 departments and 27 divisions. So everything from electrical line people to our skate electricians, wastewater, water, streets, parks. It's
Yeah.
just crazy the extent. And then and I'm glad you said that because each division is its own silo. So
Right.
when I first started here 10 years ago, I went around to the different divisions asking for them to show me, their safety programs and policies and stuff. And it was interesting because each division handles things differently. So the electrical linemen and the skate electricians, well, they handle electricity lockout, tagout differently than say water or wastewater because they're talking about water pressure. So it was kind of a unique experience, kind of getting
Yeah.
my feet wet when I started here. That they
Well, I think
are really siloized.
Yeah, and I've heard this before, and it's kind of interesting to me because this to me, of course, the budgeting process and the length of planning time and reaction time to stuff like that. But a second big difference is I feel like when you're a safety manager in a company, the scope of what that company does is kind of defined to like, you know, the manufacturing line and the warehouse. And so you deal with a similar vertical industry set of issues. But a municipality is kind of made up, like you just described, of like 15 different areas of special. You have road crews to a paint crew, right? I mean, you have, so how does that challenge your ability to keep up with all these different, silos of different types of businesses, really?
Yeah, it is really different. And I mean, our city is fairly small compared to across the United States, but we're around, I think 37,000 is our population, and our employee base is around 290. So trying to stay current with all of those different divisions can be quite difficult. And matter of fact, in our state, there's not many safety managers that work in a municipality format. Most times safety is handled by HR under like a risk management. So I think there's only a few, I know there's less than five managers of safety for municipalities across our state. So it can feel very isolated at times because you are literally the only person in safety. You kind of feel like you're on your own private safety island that the resources that you have in other companies, private industry or in the surface coal mines, it's you. I mean, everything kind of falls on your shoulders. So you're obviously spread really thin, and the moment an incident happens, that's your job. That's what you're going to
Yeah,
do.
your
So
priority is shifted
it,
immediately, right?
I don't care what you
Yeah,
have on your to-do list that day. Things change anytime there's an
yeah,
incident, and we've been very
absolutely.
fortunate over the last 10 years to really put a lot of that responsibility and ownership on our supervisors because they are ultimately responsible for the safety of their employees. So I work at kind of a higher level that if they need me, I'm here. But for instance, like if it's equipment damage, most of the supervisors handle the incident very well. They notify me right away. They take pictures. They start the reporting process. But if it's a medical involved, then with me being a certified first responder and my knowledge of workers' comp and that system, I'm gone.
You're
I'm
dispatched
going.
right away.
Yeah, I'm
One
dispatched
of
right
the,
away.
I interview a lot of people coast to coast and talk to most of the people I've talked to have been in private industry as their career and things like that. And one of the things that you just said, which I think is it's a best practice. We're talking today, folks, about public sector, private sector, these kinds of things. It's a best practice no matter what sector you're in. And it's what Randy just pointed out is accountability and responsibility is supervisory, foreman level, entity level kind of a thing. And that's when you start to really see people, embracing a safety culture and feeling a sense of ownership of it. And a lot of people will say, like, the guys roll their eyes when they see me walk onto the job site. Here comes the safety guy, right? But the reality of it is, the people on the site should be doing things
Yeah,
correctly and safely already. So they shouldn't be rolling their eyes when you show up, right? But
yeah.
still,
It's
you've got to
interesting
have
that you
that
say that.
you got to have that structure in place. Now, talk to me a little bit about consistency, because one of the toughest parts of any organization with a decentralized, they might have four or five, six manufacturing plants all over the place, even though those are producing perhaps the same product and following the same safety protocol. Yours is a little bit more complicated in municipality because you have different locations with different messages, but yet you're an entity. So, as an entity, as a municipality, how do you maintain the consistency across the organization? Do you have a process that you'd like to use? What are your checks and balances?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because one thing that I'm adamant about is that I've seen over my 28-year career is leadership development. And really it starts at the top level of leadership. So the message that the leaders share with their employees, that's the message that carries forward. So the interesting thing, you might have safety champions inside those divisions. not by title, but they've been there long enough and they know how to do the job safely. But I really think that message starts with our leaders. I mean, whatever the leaders say, that's important. And I'm not saying that take away from, what I say. And luckily, I don't have the rolling of the eyes when I arrive on site, because they're
Well, they
most of
like
the
you,
time
you
they're,
know.
yeah, I'm a likable guy. So
Yeah.
uh, the interesting thing is if you have those breakdowns, it's interesting because they appear glaringly that if you have those breakdowns in leadership, then that transcends down to the employees as well. So really getting that message across and sharing that message with our employees really needs to start at the top with our senior leaders, and then our managers, and then our supervisors.
It's those core safety principles or core expectations of you performing the job in that role that, by every department, regardless of what your connection is to, you've got to be able to have that leadership to share those message and be consistent about it. Now, when you do actual safety training, talk to us a little bit about that in a municipality? Do you have okay, we have a structured approach where we have to do this safety training X number of times a year? Because there's a difference between like the private industry that's,
Yeah.
kind of OSHA governed, if you will,
Yeah.
and the public sector, which is governed by, I'm drawing a blank right now. It's a different entity, right? You follow a different process,
No,
or
no,
talk to me a little bit about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting when I first started. I had an employee that came to me. I was actually in my first week. I was living in HR, basically going through the employee handbook and policies and stuff. And I remember I had an employee come in and say, "Hey, by the way, I need you to, write me a letter so I can take out to our DOT because I need to get my CDL, renewed." And I'm giving them this blank stare, like I have no idea what letter you're talking about. And luckily, I was sitting with our HR specialist, and she goes, "Oh yeah, there's a letter that you fill out and you put their name in and you sign it, and they take it to DOT, and then it gets them out of having to do the DOT physical every 2 years." And so realizing really quick that OSHA, DOT, all the rules and regulations are recommendations, that government's not going to come in and fine us. Now, there are certain circumstances, fatalities,
Right.
hospitalization of 3 or more people. There's a lot of different things, whether DOT or OSHA, that we still have to comply with, but mostly they're guidelines. And so it's really interesting to be able to I mean, obviously we follow above and beyond what the OSHA standards are. And the
Sure.
interesting
Yeah.
thing in going around to those divisions, some of those divisions actually exceed the OSHA regulations. So it's interesting to see that, yeah, coming from my private industry where everything was either OSHA, or in the surface coal mine where everything was MSHA, and these are the specific rules that you have to follow. We still follow those, but it doesn't have the same, I guess, clout that hey, we have to follow these because these are the law. And it's a little different because government's not going to find government.
Yeah.
It's
Probably
interesting
not.
because
Right. Yeah.
yeah, we
Yeah.
actually partnered with we have a workers' comp safety and health, or safety and risk division, that we partnered with in my very first year. In our state, OSHA broke up into 2 groups. So all of the compliance inspectors, half stayed with OSHA and the half went to this new division. And the reason why I love the new division is because it reminded me of the older OSHA technical assistance programs and
Okay.
personnel that we got to deal with when I worked in private industry. So we partnered with them right away, and every year our inspector comes out and inspects all of our facilities, goes through our training programs, and it's really nice to have a second set of eyes, because most of the time, if you're, let's say you're working out at our waste, or you're inspecting our wastewater treatment facility, you've seen that facility numerous times over the last 10 years, and maybe some of the hazards become, kind of part of the furniture. But having our inspector with us to inspect those and say, "Hey, what do you guys think about this?" So it's
Yeah.
been a really
This
great partnership.
this really makes a big difference. And listeners, if you haven't caught this on any one of our other podcasts, I'm going to point it out for you. Nearly every safety manager that I talk to, they talk about proactive outreach to their OSHA designated person or their uh, whatever organizational body they report into in their state and invite them in for a walkthrough.
Yeah.
And they really use this as a uh, opportunity to get ahead of the curve on certain items. And it sounds like you embrace the same.
Yeah. It's been fun because the previous safety manager we had here at the city, he was homegrown, so developed in house. He had worked in the division for 10 years before he retired. And when I started going out to these different divisions and, asking them questions like, how did the previous safety manager handle this? And we found different policies and procedures that some of our divisions that were complying with that they didn't need to comply with. So they were going well above and beyond the OSHA regulations, or they were operating out of the construction standards when they should be in general industry. So in my first year, there was a lot of information that was shared between divisions and myself that we got to eliminate a lot of stuff that they were doing previously that they really didn't need to have to do.
Yeah, or there
So,
was like overlap or alignment between pick one standard. You don't need to do four standards, right?
yeah.
That kind of a
Well, I
thing.
mean, in the one I can think of specifically involves DOT, and it's walk around inspections on vehicles and equipment. Our employees, I don't know if I scared them being the new safety manager or what, but they were doing a vehicle inspection every time the vehicle moved. And per DOT regulations, it's, first time in the morning when it's getting ready to head out to the field. Yeah, you do a pre-operational inspection. And then when you bring it home and park it at the end of the day, you do a post-op. But they were doing them every time the vehicle moved. The other one that I would speak to is confined space. So
Hmm.
I think the previous safety manager must have went to a training, went to a conference or something, and they were going through all the permit required confined space, and pretty much I would say, blanketed every confined space and made it a permit entry required confined space when we really didn't have to. You're crawling down in a 3 foot water vault to read a meter. You don't have to set up the tripod and the ladders, and it was fun to be able to really gain the trust and trust from our employees that I wasn't steering wrong, but there were just things that we could be doing better, and we didn't have to
Yeah.
follow as strict of the
Well,
rules and regulations as we did.
we always tend to have this discussion in safety because we have business ownership, we have salespeople accountable to commitments they made to customers in private sector, and I mean, your customers are the citizen commitments. You've got it, you've got it at the same thing out there. It's this balance between uh, safety, compliance, and training, and production and throughput, right? So
Hmm.
then you kind of think to yourself um, uh, about you're thinking like, all right, I don't want to make an order get delayed, and so I'm going to skip this safety training today. Well, that's not good. You don't ever want to skip something you need to do. But if you're overperforming on tasks, then that becomes an issue because now maybe you're affecting the timeline that it gets to, that you need to get something done, right? So you have to have that balance. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, like we talked about training programs. So each individual silo has its own specialized training that they have to do. For our parks employees, they have to be playground equipment certified. For our wastewater technicians, they're actually certified through EPA. Same thing with our water division. Our electrical line people, they go through bucket rescue and bucket training. Did I lose you? I'm still staying on here. Are you back?
Yep. Are you good? Yeah, I
I'm
don't know
good.
what happened.
Well,
Kind
you
of lost
froze up, and
everything.
I didn't want to interrupt
Yeah.
you while you froze, but
Well, it froze up, but then I got a new message that I had never gotten before that just said, "We've stopped recording your session." So that's all right because I'll have somebody on our production team splice it together. So I'm gonna hit record here again, and we will pick up right where we left off. Okay.
okay.
Yeah. So do you? Do you remember where you stopped? Or I
Yeah, I
can,
was getting ready to talk about the different training programs in our different divisions.
okay, so I'm going to ask you that question. Could you give us an overview so we have a clean spot to pick up? All right. Um, okay. So we're still recording, so that's good. Um, so, Randy, could you tell us a little bit about the different kinds of training programs that you have across the different types of divisions?
Yeah, I would love to. So in looking at our different divisions, each division has its own specialized training that they have to go through. So, for instance, we have our electrical line people. They go through bucket truck rescue every year, and that's a formalized training. So they have a classroom portion, and then they go out to the field, and actually everybody has to perform a bucket rescue, which was kind of funny. One year that I was there filming for a video for the city, and I asked if I could be rescued, and they all kind of looked at me like, really? And I'm like, yeah. They had no idea the background that I had in mine rescue, and there's a lot of things that I did in mine rescue training that no one would ever know. So I was like, yeah. So I put on the harness, got in the bucket, and they I would say probably forcibly removed me from the bucket as
Geez.
kind of
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it was a rite of passage, but since I didn't flinch and cry, I think they were okay with it. But so our electrical line people, they have bucket rescue. We have our parks operators that they have to make sure that they're playground equipment certified. Uh, we have certain divisions that are CPR AED trained, so they go through that every 2 years. So it was really interesting to see the specialized training that each of the divisions go through, and that's not something that I lead. That's something that they reach out and they have certain trainers that they use, and they come in and perform that training for
Yeah.
our employees. So it's
Yeah.
it's really specialized, and so the thing that I kind of like about working in the municipality, the days of having like a full blown 60-minute safety meeting to cover a topic, well, our divisions are so specialized that it's really difficult to have those type of trainings. The only one I can think of off the top of my head uh, would be like bloodborne pathogen training. So every two
Yeah.
years, our employees go through that, either hands-on or online through our web portal. The other one that I was thinking of is everyone that operates a forklift. So they have to go through the forklift certification training that is put on by our warehouse technicians. So it's interesting that some of the training does cross over, but most of it's just specialized to the
Yeah.
individual divisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a lot of these divisions, of course, they're decentralized, and then the people are on the move. I mean, these are people out in the field, right?
Yeah.
So do you have between formal training, different like toolbox talks or things that you do to keep things top of mind for the crews that are in motion, running plows, up on utilities, out in the streets, in the parks?
Yeah, again, it's really great because a lot of that ownership and responsibility falls on the supervisors. So they hold those individual weekly safety toolbox talk meetings and such. And since I am one person, it would be impossible for me to
Right. Yep.
to attend every one of those. And then every once in a while, I will stop in. I remember going out to our wastewater treatment plant. Every Wednesday they have a safety meeting at 3, so it's nice to go out there and just attend. And then if they have any questions about what's going on in safety or what are some of the incidents that we could talk about that we'd want them to learn from, those are opportunities are far and few between because again, you're just one person with what I say 27 divisions.
Yeah, right, right. No, I hear you. And that's
We
got
do have
that.
some more. We have some. I wouldn't really call it formal, but we have some mandatory training that we have to do every year, and this is across all of our employees. So from the payroll clerk all the way to the electrical services superintendent, and those are we have to do defensive driving. So we do defensive driving, workplace harassment, drug-free workplace, and bloodborne pathogens. So those are the four main ones. Uh, but we do have, obviously, since I'm on here with you, is we do incorporate Ving training into our what we call our hazardous employees. So workers' comp categories or categorizes your employees as either non-hazardous, so that's more your clerical, and then you have your hazardous. Those are the ones out in the field. So initially, about 2 years ago, and you can ask me this question later, so I can go into more detail. But we stumbled upon Ving.
Yeah, you did.
Really, I was
Literally
at
at a trade show.
yeah, I remember I was at the Safepedia Safety Connect conference, and I won a prize, and the prize was I got a year membership to Ving. And I'd always wanted to try micro training, micro learning training. I kind of wanted to do it on my own, kind of put something together. And then when I had the meeting with yourself and Stephanie, and I got to see the huge benefits, obviously, of micro learning training. Not only you don't have to be sitting in front of a computer to be able to do the training, and I thought that was going to be really great for our employees. So I did a test trial.
Hmm.
So the only two divisions that I actually put into the program were our electrical services division and our wastewater group. And so they were kind of like our guinea pigs. We
Hmm.
tested them for about 3 to 4 months. And then the funny thing was other divisions started hearing about this training. And initially we were just going to do a 6 month pilot and see if this is something we were going to go with. But we ended up enrolling all of our hazardous type employees in our Ving program. So we have over 122 people that actually participate in the Ving training every time we release a new training.
That's awesome. And I know, we hear this, obviously, we're in the business of micro learning training for safety and compliance and that. So we hear it a lot, but people love the micro learning. It is great for the crews out there and and of course the features in the Ving system make it easier for somebody like you to manage all that. So that really works out well. Now, my next question for you is, and maybe this is something that you're leveraging the Ving platform for as well, is data and documentation. Is it the same in a municipality as to what you see maybe in the private industry, or is it two different things? And how do you keep up with it?
Well, it's really different. So when I first started, uh, we had those 4 mandatory trainings that I talked about, and it was really difficult trying to keep track of. So our system tracks who attended the training. And so the question that I asked our HR director was, well, how can we tell who hasn't taken the training? And he said, well, I don't think the system will tell us that. And I said, well, me being an Excel junkie, I'm like, well, I can create that. So I created this safety training database in Excel to keep track of these trainings. So that was I did that for about 7 or 8 years. And then our IT group actually developed a report that you can see in house. So I got to literally stop keeping track of it in Excel. But what actually is interesting about the Ving platform is I can go in and I can search individuals, I can search divisions. I also keep, I'll probably never get rid of Excel, but I still keep another backup database so I can quickly go in and see which divisions in a more of a report form that I can send them and say, hey, here are the employees that have missed their last Ving or something. And so I regularly share that with our managers that are in those divisions that are in our Ving program. So they have a quick snapshot of what's going on. But the thing I love about the Ving platform is I can go in and select, let's say, ladder safety, and I can look and just with a few clicks, I can quickly tell who hasn't taken that training. So it's a great thing to manage through the Ving platform. It's so easy to manage, and you don't really have to be very knowledgeable in the system. And then the other thing on the kind of the back end is anytime I have an issue, there's a little text box, a little chat box that I can pull up, and usually within a couple hours, Karen is getting back to me. And the thing that I love about your customer service side is it's one thing to get an email that has instructions, hey, here's what you need to do, click here, maybe some screenshots. But what Karen does is she actually shows a video because obviously she has access to our database. She actually goes in and records a screenshot of the video of exactly, hey, Randy, this is where you need to go. You can click here. And so it's so much better as far as customer service that I have a video. I'm a video guy. I love
Yeah,
videos.
there you
So
go. Everybody
it
likes
was
a
really,
video. Yeah,
it was really,
show me how to do it in a couple of minutes at most, please.
yeah, yeah. We
That's why the micro learning is so engaging to workers, and they, you know, people get to, especially like someone like yourself who has been using it with employee base for quite some time, it, as soon as people get a notification that they have a micro learning to do, they know that they can get it done in a reasonable amount of time versus derailing their day or something like that. So we always say you get engagement with the training, and then there's of course test questions and things like that. However, what we really need is engagement so people absorb it so that they can recall the safety information and reuse it in the field when it matters the most. Obviously, that is key. And thank you so much for sharing so many kind words about Karen. For listeners out there, Karen, as you probably put two and two together, is Randy's support team member that he likes to reach out to. And they do a fantastic job of working firsthand with our customers. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you a personal question around anything in particular, like that that you have noticed throughout your career where you've implemented a new process or some type of change in compliance or safety that you felt like was like, Tony, this is my best practice. This is really the thing that like I kind of hold true to it month after month, and it really works well for me.
Yeah. The one thing that comes to mind is our incident reporting procedures. So when I first started at the city, I had these, I still remember the day. It was in my like first week of working. There were these 3 binders that sat on a shelf, big 5-inch binders that didn't have any words on the outside or any labels. And one day I was having lunch and I opened them up, and these were, copies of our incident reports. And so when I had opened up all 3 binders, I realized that all of these incidents were from the same year. And the one thing I noticed is on the report, it actually talks about, it actually had a checkbox that said, was the safety manager notified immediately? Yes or no, and then the time. And what I noticed was most of them, the safety manager was not notified immediately. And most of the time, the box was checked no. And so
Mm,
I'm thinking to myself, upon my
mm,
first couple investigations, I'd get called out to do, let's say a citizen, ran into the back of one of our water trucks. This is one I can remember specifically. I arrived on site and I asked the senior water operator. The police officer was talking to the citizen, getting his insurance and stuff. And so I had time to talk with the employee before we were released, and I could take him for the post-incident drug screen. And I asked him the question. I said, hey, I just have a question for you. Based on what I had seen in those files, I said, hey, does the safety manager come out on every incident? He goes, oh, yeah, every incident. I'm like, and so I kind of said it, it's one of those times where you probably needed a filter, but I let my words that I was thinking come out of my mouth. And I said, wow, how did he get anything done?
yeah,
Because,
right.
we
Yeah,
have a lot of these little nuisance incidents. So to be traveling to all these, there was no way. It just wasn't going to be
right,
possible.
right.
I went to our HR director and asked him, if there was a policy on incident reporting. And so he printed it out. I highlighted, I remember going to the HR specialist and grabbing her pink highlighter, and I highlighted the very first line and handed it back to him. And I said, the first order of business as the new safety manager, we need to do this. And when he looked at the form, it says all incidents need to be reported to the safety manager immediately. And he looked at me and he goes, are we not doing this? And I said, no, we're not. So this actually led to another best practice that I was, I had basically, all the incidents come to me. So when I would get these incidents in, I would have this little post-it note sheet of paper, and everything that was wrong about the report, I would write on this little list. And then I went to the HR director and I showed him the list and said, hey, give me 90 minutes with every supervisor in a classroom setting so we can clear up a lot of this stuff that doesn't seem to be working. So I'm trying to think. So in my first year, I did a 90-minute session with all the supervisors and managers. I think we had probably 80 to 90% of all the managers and supervisors in this session. And as I went through the different things about incident reporting, workers' comp management, taking pictures, insurance claims, workers' comp claims, all those things, it was interesting because at the end of the session, I'd have these supervisors that come up to me and, thank me. Hey, Randy, you did a great job. And, I've been in public speaking for 28 years. So I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And, trying to, discount their praise. But I asked a follow-up question. I said, hey, how long have you worked here? And I remember I was talking to one of our sergeants, and he said, oh, I've been a sergeant for the last 15 years. And I said, great, great. Well, let me ask you a question. How much of this kind of training have you had, over your career? And he said, zero. And I knew that I hit a hot spot. So about every year, every other year, I still host these 90-minute sessions. And anything that I see that comes up in reports or workers' comp cases or insurance claims, these are things that I can actively share with the managers who are helping me manage the overall safety process. So that was a huge thing. Getting the procedures set in motion that no, the safety manager will not be on site for every little dent of a bumper or a fleck of paint. The thing that I really appreciated about when I came to the city is we report every incident. So I didn't have to worry about underreporting,
Yeah.
maybe over-reporting, but
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
that we had that process already established. But by following the newly developed incident reporting procedures, man, it streamlined everything. So,
Yeah.
and it actually incorporated, we actually were able to bring in finance since they handle all of our insurance claims to give her an opportunity to share, hey, what are some things that she's seen on this citizen-based, insurance claims that she has a captive audience. So instead of, sending an email, she can actively talk to these supervisors and managers in person live and share maybe the frustrations that she's having with the report filing. So it was a really great
It's
opportunity. And I really highly value those training sessions that I get to give to those supervisors and managers.
I was just getting ready to ask you as part of the last question for today. Well, near the end of our time together, is what kind of best practice or advice would you give to somebody that was new to a safety manager position in a municipality? But I think the question is, you answered it for me, is it's not so much just in a municipality. It's if you're stepping into a new safety manager role, and you know, tell me what you think about this as I sum up what you just said, is that your job is to take a look at initially what are the existing processes and how might they need to be changed, adapted, or modified to be more streamlined and optimized. And and then another part where you talked like back further in today's discussion was, just because it was done kind of like the way it was done for years, it's up to the new person to step in to kind of check the alignment. Are we
Yeah.
following more than one policy or procedure? Are we following state regulated plus a subgroup of state regulated, and really figuring out what is the best combination of processes for your organization? So it's about challenge the status quo and use your experience to implement something new if it's needed, right? Yep.
When it comes to change management, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that fear change. We've been doing we've been doing it this way for the last 20 years, or when I first started in safety, you'd get the comments of, I've been doing this longer than you've been alive, and you're like, oh, okay, that's great. But the interesting thing is, I really wanted to capitalize on my experience over those first two industries, in general industry and surface coal mining. I really wanted to challenge the status quo. I did a lot of investigation in my first 2 months. I spent the first month going through the incidents from the previous 3 years because I knew that's what our workers' comp premiums were based on. And I did see some underreporting when it come to some of the reports that we were required to do. And so to be able to take that to the HR director and say, hey, this is the way we did it in the past. And I believe, in my opinion, that that's not the right way. And this is the way we need to do it moving forward. I cannot tell you how many times that I had that comment said to me, well, that's the way we've always done it. I'm like, well, that doesn't make it right. So I want to streamline our processes. I don't want to add more safety rules and regulations to your everyday job. I want to keep you safe, and I want to give you the most current data or the most current regulation on what we should be following. So those regulations, like I said, they're a guideline, they're guidance for us to do it the right way in order to protect our employees. So challenging the status quo was kind of fun for me because as I was in a new position, when I would go to the HR director and say, hey, I really would like to implement this, and here's the reasons why, he would ask me the question every time, well, do we have a policy written on that? And that's the one thing that I would really stress to people starting a new starting with a new company, or even whether it's a company or municipality, is really finding out what's in your safety cupboard. What are the policies and
Yeah.
procedures that your employees are following now, and are they correct?
Hmm.
Are these the things that we should be focusing on? And really, other organizations that I've joined, like when you join a safety team, you're low person on the totem pole. You just got hired, and you don't really know those policies and procedures that are going on. So you're less prone to ask those questions,
True.
and so
More prone
so
to
you
get in line with the
yeah you you
process.
you
Right. Yeah.
you follow the status quo. You don't
Right.
challenge the status quo,
Yeah.
but
But when you
but our
step into the
HR
position,
director, go ahead.
I was going to say, when you step into the position like yourself, where you're the man now, you're the one. You've got to really own and embrace and feel a sense of ownership, even if it's an existing process. You still have to go through that review so that you can feel like you own it going forward, right?
Yeah, I mean, looking at our different divisions, so if I have a SCADA electrician that is working on at our wastewater treatment facility, which lockout tagout program are they following? So just having those simple conversations with our employees gave me a huge amount of knowledge of the overall safety culture that we had here at the city. And it really had them start to not really challenge, but really ask the question, is this the correct policy we should be following? And then they would always try to default, well, this is how we've always done. I go, that's fine, but here moving forward, this is the new way we're going to do things. So when I was talking about giving that ownership and responsibility to our supervisors and managers for that initial incident notification, I mean, it probably took about 6 months to get everybody on board. But now it's such a streamlined system that it I would say it's such a streamlined system right now that things get handled quickly and not have to be bogged down with paperwork that maybe we've done in the past that we don't necessarily need to focus on. I mean, our initial focus, especially if it's an employee that's injured, is focusing on their care and that they're getting the best medical care they can. The
Absolutely.
reporting and all that other reports and stuff, we can
Yeah.
handle that later. The most
Yeah.
important thing is the safety of the employee.
Absolutely. Randy, I got to jump in. Of course, this has been great conversation. I have a feeling you and I could talk all day long about this stuff. You're
Totally.
just yeah, you've got some great depth and breadth of information to share with other safety professionals, without a doubt. But unfortunately, we can't spend the entire day just chit chatting away. Now, if we were in the same city, maybe we could go grab lunch together and continue
That
the
would be
conversation.
awesome.
Sooner or later, they're going to figure out how to have a virtual lunch right through the thing, right?
Yeah.
So, but anyhow, I just want to thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Listeners, viewers out there, I am sure there are plenty of key takeaways today. And if you're new to the safety world, or if you're in the private sector thinking about going into a municipality or public sector, hopefully this has been very interesting to you about some of the similarities that you might find, and or some of the big differences. And Randy Milliron certainly has shared some excellent expertise with us and some interesting insights in the day in the life of working at that municipality. So, Randy, thanks again for being a guest on Compliance in Motion. For all you listeners and viewers out there, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Hopefully, you found today's conversation extremely helpful. Until next time, we'll see you out on the street. Be safe and injury free.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.